Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is a groundbreaking series that dives into the lives of people living in the last frontier. Each episode introduces you to colorful characters from around the state. Funding for Indie Alaska is provided in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company. Catch the latest episodes at alaskapublic.org.
The National Weather Service.
Good Tuesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 3rd of November. As always, we encourage you and your community to stay up to date on your local weather information. You can do that in lots of different ways, whether that's social media with Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, on the web at weather.gov/Alaska or arh.noaa.gov for the entire statewide view. With a weather info line at 800-472-0391. You can find us on your NOAA Weather Radio or on the Marine VHF band. Here's a look at what's going on across the lower and middle Yukon valleys, as well as the lower Koyukuk Valley and areas around the eastern Norton Sound region, as well as the Yukon Delta and the northern Seward Peninsula coastline around the Chukchi Sea. High surf advisories there for the coastal areas. That will continue probably through about 6 p.m. tonight for areas up north, but will continue a little bit further on as we head into the overnight hours for areas in eastern Norton Sound and the Yukon Delta. They're looking for a little bit abnormal high surf conditions, probably rough, and maybe some minor beach erosion with that. Not the worst you've seen, but not always the best situation there. As we get inland a little bit more, snow is going to be an issue. Again, for the lower Yukon and middle Yukon valleys, that means an opportunity for snow to develop as we go into the evening and overnight hours, probably after about 9 o'clock in most locations there. Probably talking about 4 to 8 inches of snow as is forecast now from our friends at the National Weather Service office in Fairbanks. So watching for more snow to develop all the way from Galena to Caltag, out toward Grayling, north of Aniak and north of Bethel, but out toward the Hooper Bay area as well. So watch for snow to pick up there later on tonight and to carry onward into tomorrow. And that's all after a storm passes through the central and eastern Aleutians. The colder air moving north and east away from that will also bring some strong winds through the central Aleutians, and the National Weather Service office in Anchorage now, the forecaster is fairly confident that there will be some hurricane force wind gusts moving through the central chain. On land, those gusts could reach upwards of 75 miles per hour. At sea, you're talking about waves, seas that could be upwards of 32 feet or higher there. So storm force winds for sure around the marine areas as that system moves through, and the winds will quickly change around to the northwesterly direction as we get into late tonight and early tomorrow. So watch for some rapid and intense winds coming up there in the next 12 hours or so. Here's a look at the satellite picture across the Bering Sea. You can see one wave here and the moisture attached to the southern side working up into the lower Yukon Valley. This is what's going to help produce snow. This is the system that's going to produce the high winds. You can see just a beautiful leaf is what we call this here across the central and northern sections of the Pacific, and how that's attached to the moisture trailing off behind it. Just fantastic to watch from a satellite perspective. Probably not the prettiest thing to see if you're sitting in Adak or Atka tonight, but this is a satellite signature, or a kind of a shape that we look for to note a very strong weather system. So you've probably seen this before, and you'll certainly see that again. As we look at the rest of Alaska, you can see one area of low pressure now in the northern and eastern part of the Gulf. This is blowing in some drier air now to central and southern parts of southeast. There have been some pockets of rainfall with this, and there continues to be some light snow moving through the Chugach and eastward now. A lot of that has left behind a clearer sky for south central. As temperatures remain cool, areas of fog will form tonight, and that might make it a little bit tough for folks watching in south central and looking up for what could be an otherwise really good night for the aurora. Hopefully anywhere in Alaska, if you have a clear sky, make sure you look up tonight, as your chances of seeing some pretty good lights are fairly high at this point. Looking northward, you can see clouds cover the north slope and most of the west. There are some breaks there in Norton Sound, and then south and west of the first weather system, you can see there's a little bit of drier air. Here's that second, more powerful system working through the central Aleutians. At this hour, you can see the clouds spreading eastward quickly, and the winds again will come in later on this evening and overnight, switch around to the north and west and pick up substantially. Looking at the forecast tonight, you'll see low pressure across the eastern Gulf spreading some rain through southeast. We still have some pockets of snow across the interior and mainly west and along the mountains. Some areas of light snow across the Kotzebue Sound region and low pressure working through the central and western Bering Sea at 994 millibars, the stronger systems at 984. That will deepen tonight to 965 millibars. Again, a high wind warning for the central Aleutians there. Low pressure sitting across the northern parts of southeast, still stirring up some rain showers tonight and some pockets of snow showers across the coastal areas of the Wrangell, St. Elias, Yakutat, and areas westward toward Prince William Sound. High pressure will try and build in across the northern parts of the Copper River Basin, just north of Gulkana at 1,012 millibars. And that's really helping to feed the system that's working up the west coast. That will spread snow up the lower and middle Yukon valleys, across the Seward Peninsula, and areas along the lower and middle Yukon. Again, we'll see the greatest amount of snow right now. Winter weather advisories there for areas that could see upwards of 4 to 8 inches of new snow. For most of the coast, especially south of Norton Sound, it'll be rain or rain mixed with snow, at least for a time. And then west and south of that, the air is too warm and it's all liquid precipitation, but a lot of wind with that as well as that system moves very quickly to the east. A front will cruise through the central and eastern chain during the daytime tomorrow. In Alaska and Dutch Harbor, Nikolsky, you'll feel that as well, but no warnings are out for your area at this time. Stronger southerlies working over the Bristol Bay region will promote warm air working through eastern Norton Sound and all the way into the Seward Peninsula. The chance for snow shifts north and east during the day, and we'll have some fairly gusty southerly winds across the west, especially some of the capes there. High pressure sits right along the Alcan border, south and east of Northway and Tok. Look for some drier patches of sky there, maybe a little bit of sunshine throughout the day, but don't be surprised if you run into a little bit of fog as well. Rain showers continue for southeast, snow showers just offshore of the Beaufort Seacoast, and around Kotzebue Sound, look for periods of rain and snow showers there. For Thursday, low pressure will center up close to Bristol Bay at 971 millibars, so it's filling in and it should be losing strength as it moves eastward. Look for the frontal boundary to work through the Gulf, though, and with that, stronger southerlies move some higher moisture content air northward into the Prince William Sound region, as well as the northern and eastern Gulf Coast. So from areas from Sitka northward, expect a better chance of rainfall there. Higher terrain will see a better chance of snow showers. The Chilcoot and White Pass will be some of those areas, of course. And look for areas along the western Alaska Range and westward toward eastern Norton Sound to pick up a chance of snow. Snow showers for the middle and upper Yukon valleys, Kotzebue Sound, Seward Peninsula, with rainfall continuing around St. Paul and St. George, and periods of rainfall for the central and eastern Aleutians with gusty northwest winds developing, and that could be a fairly windy period for the Alaska Peninsula as well as into Kodiak Island as we get into Thursday and certainly Friday too. We'll be watching for the changes with this system all the way through the rest of the weekend, so you do the same. In the meantime, the temperatures today were in the 30s and 40s for southeast. Not a bad day all in all. From Sitka at 47, Ketchikan and Annette in the mid to upper 40s, 43 with rain and Hyder, and upper 30s and lower 40s around the Juneau region. Yakutat saw 39. Prince William Sound had temperatures in the 30s today. Cordova, though, was 45. Homer, 38, 33 in Kenai, 1 degree cooler here in Anchorage with temperatures in the upper 20s for Talkeetna. Looked like the Matanuska Glacier region was in the upper teens with Healy at 27. Fort Greely saw 24. Fairbanks 18. Eagle was about 24 degrees there. Fort Yukon 18 degrees. Arctic Village only 25 for Anaktuvuk Pass with lower 20s for Barrow. Eastward toward Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse it was only 19 degrees today. Wainwright had 18. Around Kotzebue Sound we saw temperatures near 33 in Kotzebue itself. 30 for Shishmaref, 36 in Nome. And a little bit further south toward Kobuk, it was 36. Bethel had 37 degrees. Aniak was looking at temperatures in the mid-30s today with McGrath at 36. Coastal areas of southwest were generally in the lower 40s like Cape Newenham. 43 for Dillingham and King Salmon today. Mid-40s for most of the Alaska Peninsula. Sandpoint was 46. Unalaska and Dutch Harbor also 46 degrees. Mid-40s for the Pribilofs, for Adak and Atka, and Shemya saw 32. Now, overnight low temperatures will be coolest where the air is the driest and clearest, and that looks like the eastern interior. Along the Alcan tonight, temps generally in the single digits to low teens. The interior, including the middle Tanana Valley, will be in the mid-teens. Coastal areas of the west, generally in the lower to mid-30s there, and warming up around Bristol Bay. The peninsula as well as the chain, almost upper 30s and lower 40s. South central upper 20s and southeast upper 30s to about 40 degrees. High temperatures tomorrow around Juneau will reach into the lower 40s, with south central still holding in the 30s. Kodiak closer to 40. For the Middle Tanana Valley, as well as areas northward in the interior, 20s will do the trick, with about 23 in Barrow and Prudhoe Bay and Deadhorse. Kotzebue Sound in the lower 30s. Same goes for Red Dog Mine. Closer to 40 in Nome, and warming up for Southwest with highs in the lower 40s for you, and mid-40s for the Alaska Peninsula, Dutch Harbor, Unalaska in the upper 40s, and St. Paul about 44. Flying weather now shows IFR conditions north of Barrow, as well as areas in the Kotzebue Sound region and the south-facing coastline of the Seward Peninsula. Watch for increasing areas of IFR across the south-facing coast of the eastern chain, as well as the Alaska Peninsula, as that storm system is out to your west and blowing moisture right up against the higher terrain. Most of southeast will stay under MVFR conditions throughout the day. Anaktuvuk Pass and Adigan Pass will likely turn over to IFR conditions as we go through your Wednesday. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass will hover around MVFR through most of the midday. The Rainy Pass should start to see increasing clouds throughout the region, especially on the western side. Watch for MVFR there, and maybe some slight improvements for Windy Pass. You could turn over to VFR if you're flying that direction, and for Isabel Pass. For Mentasta Pass, watch for VFR conditions to improve in that region, as well as Tonita Pass looking to hold there really through most of the day. Portage Pass, we expect visual flight rule, a nicer day there, and Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect to see MVFR through most of your Wednesday. The freezing levels show the warmer air is lifting northward, but it's also spreading more into the Gulf than it is northward along the western coast. Look for levels out over the Gulf and southeast to run between about 2,000 and 4,000 feet, with that higher level there south of the Dixon entrance. Levels across southwest and the eastern chain are hovering around 2,000 feet. Everything else is at or below freezing. And that presents us with an interesting problem. With moisture spreading in from the south and west and plenty of lift out ahead of this, there is the potential for a little bit more than normal ice across the south and west, as well as the central and eastern chain. Watch for most of that to be occasional moderate there across southwestern Alaska, as well as the central chain. You could run into some areas where there might be some isolated severe in the better part of that storm there. And again, all of that generally above 4,000 to 6,000 feet in southwestern Alaska. The jet stream has a powerful area of low pressure centered up across the Bering Sea on the west and southern side that's running 150 knot winds on the power side of that system. That's why the surface weather is so strong. Out ahead of that, though, a ridge of high pressure that's quickly leaving the region. So we are under the influence of this low moving through the southern Bering. Strong southerlies ahead of that and powerful northwesterly winds dragging in cold across the western Bering with this system. Winds at 9,000 feet showing 50 to 65 knots across the eastern chain. And the ridge slowly moving out of the way across the Gulf of Alaska. You can see those southerlies there reaching as high as 50 to 70 knots on the south and eastern side of the storm. And again, powerful northwesterly winds on the western side. Southerlies extend all the way up through the Bering Strait with winds around 25 to 30 knots there. So watch for some chop over the higher terrain. We've drawn that in for you generally below 4,000 feet across the south-facing coast of the Seward Peninsula, including Nome. Some of that could reach occasional moderate. And for areas along the southwestern coast and most of the chain, at least occasional moderate and perhaps some isolated severe during the day, generally below 4,000 feet. So most of the troubles in the west and along the chain for tomorrow's aviators. We'll take a look at your marine weather when Perry Dady comes back to walk you through the forecast. Stay tuned.
Coming up on Destination Tomorrow, a unique ballistic parachute system might help pilots and passengers potentially survive a catastrophic accident. And we visit the Andøya rocket range in Andenes, Norway, to find out how NASA is investigating the Northern Lights. Plus, we'll take a look back at how NASA research helped change the shape of America's air superiority in World War II. And Johnny Alonso finds out how air traffic controllers keep a watchful eye on our skies at all times. All this and more next on Destination Tomorrow.
Hello everyone, I'm Steele McGonigal.
And I'm Kara O'Brien, and welcome to Destination Tomorrow.
This program will uncover how past, present, and future research is creating today's knowledge to answer the questions and solve the challenges of tomorrow.
The northern lights are a celestial phenomenon that have amazed people for centuries. The scientific name for the phenomena is Aurora Borealis, which is Latin and translates into the red dawn of the north. Although they are incredible to watch, the particles that make up the auroras are actually a type of electricity that can cause electrical surges and disrupt satellite operations in space and communications here on Earth.
To better understand these problems, NASA has been working with researchers and engineers at the Andøya rocket range in Andenes, Norway. Sophisticated rockets are launched into the atmosphere to collect valuable data that might explain the secrets of the auroras.
Jennifer Pulley spoke with Dr. Sten Odenwald at the Andøya rocket range in Andenes, Norway to find out more.
The Aurora Borealis, or Northern Lights, is one of the most beautiful, natural occurring phenomena known to man. These shimmering currents of light, which are normally seen near the Arctic Circle, have intrigued and inspired observers for thousands of years. Until the late 19th century, many still believed that the Northern Lights were driven by supernatural means, rather than by natural means. Although these old beliefs are intriguing, we now know that the auroras are actually caused by energized particles colliding with the Earth's magnetosphere. Until recently, the auroras had little direct impact on life here on Earth. But with almost every person on the planet now relying on satellites and electricity as part of their daily lives, the need to understand auroral activity has increased. This is because those same particles that collide with the magnetosphere to create the Northern Lights can also severely damage important satellites and cause outages in electrical power grids around the world. In an effort to better understand these events, NASA is using innovative technologies to learn more about the Northern Lights and how they affect us here on Earth. I spoke with NASA Goddard's Dr. Sten Odenwald here at the Andøya rocket range in Andenes, Norway, to find out more.
It's a very complicated process that leads to an aurora. Once you see it, the whole process is sort of hidden from view. You know, we understand a little bit about how the particles get from the outer parts of the magnetic field of the Earth and into the atmosphere, but we don't see the details, you know, how the particles go from one kind of a system into another, how they get boosted in energy. Even at this late stage, we don't exactly know what the particles are that produce the aurora. Tracking them from where they're produced and where they're energized all the way down to the atmosphere is still something of a mystery. And that's why we have satellite and rocket experiments that are trying to fill in those missing pieces of the puzzle.
To understand why it is important to study the Northern Lights, we must first understand how they work. The sun is constantly emitting streams of electrically charged particles in all directions.
This stream of charged particles is called the solar wind. Since the sun is 93 million miles away, it takes about 3 days for the particles to reach Earth. As the solar winds flow by the Earth, it causes a disturbance in the Earth's magnetosphere. This disturbance energizes currents of particles which are steered by magnetic forces towards the Earth's poles. These energized particles collide with oxygen and nitrogen atoms in our atmosphere, which produce the colorful light that we see in the aurora. Although beautiful to watch, these currents of particles are actually a form of electricity, which can generate up to 800 gigawatts of electrical power. This electrical energy flowing in the upper atmosphere can cause currents to flow in the ground, producing disruptions in communication, electrical outages, and fuel leaks. The high-energy particles flowing in space that often accompany these storms can also hit satellites, damaging their sensitive electronics and creating false commands. This can wreak havoc on television, pager, and other communication services here on Earth. NASA researchers hope to find new ways to predict not only when these storms will hit Earth, but also hope to find ways to reduce their destructive effects when they do.
What are some of the tools you use to study the Northern Lights?
We have satellites that seem to be able to look at everything that goes on with a solar storm and the production of aurora, literally from cradle to grave. We have satellites that watch the solar surface for the big leaps of matter and energy. We've got satellites that look at the wind in between the planets to watch what that's doing. We also have satellites that are in tighter orbits to the Earth so that they can look at the poles of the Earth and see the aurora happen. They can also measure electric fields in space and magnetic fields in space. So they can also see the invisible flows of particles around the Earth. And then finally, we have rockets that go up into the aurora from the bottom at the same time that the satellites are passing overhead. So we can kind of see the physics in between, flows of particles inwards, and the rockets see the electrical fields that are set up by these things. And we get this complete picture from rockets and satellite observations.
So why is Norway such a popular place to study the northern lights?
It turns out that Norway is in a place that's very favorably located to actually see the aurora directly overhead. So you can launch the rockets directly up very quickly to get into the aurora at the time that they're changing.
Dr. Odenwald, how do you think NASA research is helping us better understand the aurora and its impact on Earth?
Well, NASA's invested an awful lot of time and effort into providing scientists with the technology and equipment they need to really make powerful and insightful discoveries about how aurora work. And that feeds into our knowledge of the environment that we live in space and how that affects human technology, our billions of dollars of satellites that we have there, the health of astronauts because of the energetic particles. It all works together. And if we can deeply understand space weather effects with the help of NASA technology, it's going to be much easier for us to operate in space, and that's the direction that we want to go as a civilization.
Auroras occur around both the northern and southern geomagnetic poles. While the northern lights are known as the aurora borealis, the southern lights are referred to as the aurora australis.
Welcome back to your Alaska weather. I'm meteorologist Perry Daney. Now for your marine forecast. Starting off with the sea ice forecast. The Beaufort Sea is still totally covered in sea ice, and you're still having some ice formation along the northwest coastline and on the western eastern Siberian coast along the Chukchi Sea. And you still have some ice formation continuing in the Kotzebue and Norton Sound. You're going to have southerly winds picking up here in the next day or two, so some of this ice will start pushing farther north and coming away from the coastline. Starting with the southeast for your marine forecast for Wednesday. In the inside waters, you're going to have southwesterly winds and then more southerly. And then northerly coming out of the Lynn Canal at 15 knots. The outside waters are predominantly going to be all small craft winds, and wave height's going to range from 14 to 17 feet. For Thursday, the inside waters are a little stronger, gradient picking up, and you're going to have gale force winds out of the Dixon entrance, and then small craft as you go farther north into Lynn Canal. The outside waters are predominantly all southerly to southeasterly as you get near Yakutat, and all gale force winds, and your wave heights are going to be the highest on the outside waters. For south central for Wednesday, coming out of the Cook Inlet, northern portion, you're going to have northeast winds, and then gradually shift more northwesterly and westerly at 25 knots through the Barren Islands. Then on the Prince William Sound region, you're going to have northwest winds 15 knots. And then pretty much all southeasterly winds, small craft from south of Prince William Sound all the way down the eastern Kenai, and then pick it up to gale force winds as you get closer to the Barren Islands and the Kodiak region. For Thursday, the Prince William Sound is going to be predominantly easterly winds at 30 knots. The waters as you go along south to Kodiak are going to be gale force and storm force, almost storm force there coming out of the Hinchinbrook entrance there, and then gale force as you go towards the Barren Islands. And then they're going to shift more southwesterly at 40 knots just south of Kodiak with this next system that's going to be to your southwest there, that's approaching the Pacific. Out of the Cook Inlet, northeasterly winds 20-25 knots, and then you start shifting more southerly for the Barren Islands and southeasterly there through Shelikof Strait. For Wednesday, for the Alaska Peninsula, again, you're going to have this strong Pacific low that's way to the west, and then you're going to have pretty much southerly winds, gale force winds on both the Pacific and the Bering side. Your wave height's going to range from 8 to 19 feet, a little higher there on the Pacific side. For Thursday, you're going to have predominantly all westerly gale force to storm force winds as you get on the Bering of the Pacific side, and northwesterly there for the Bristol Bay region. Now for the Aleutians, you're going to have this strong North Pacific low that's coming up here and including right around AKwx and 2, and you're going to have on the back side of this low all northwesterly winds. You can see hurricane force winds here at 65 knots, and then diminishing some to storm force as you go closer to Dutch at westerly 55 to 50 knots. And then for Thursday, as the low moves farther, this low is going to move farther to the east. You're going to have predominantly all then westerly winds, pretty much from the western, from Shem western Aleutians all the way to the central Aleutians and eastern Aleutians. And again, they'll be a little bit stronger as you get closer to Dutch there at storm force winds, and southerly on the Pacific side. For the west coast, pretty much all southerly winds, small craft, a little stronger gale force southeasterly with being affected by that low pressure system that's to the south of the Pribilofs. So you're going to have southeasterly at 35, 40 knots there in the Bristol Bay region. For Thursday, winds will shift to the northwesterly predominantly. There'll be a little bit weaker small craft farther north in the Bering Sea, but if you get more towards the central and the Pribilofs, there'll be gale force at 35 to 45 knots. And wave heights will be the smallest near Gamble, and then pick up as you go with the stronger winds here at the Pribilofs. For the Arctic coast, you're going to have southerly winds, no ice there from Barrow east, and then along the northwest coastline and going down to the Bering Strait, there'll be northeast to start shifting to southeasterly and 20 knots. Then for Thursday, pretty much all easterly winds 20 knots along the Arctic coastline, and then northeasterlies there shift along throughout the rest of the way to the Bering Strait. And again, freezing spray with still the colder air that's filtered in. For tonight's forecast, there's this strong North Pacific low we've been talking about, this occlude low that's pushing up near AKwx and 2, and you're going to have a large swath of rain, and on the backside some mixture of rain and snow. And then for the south central, you're going to have this low that's going to bring some rain showers and snow on the backside. This is your Alaska weather. Good evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.